Ghost Hunting in New England,
your favorite spooky podcast.
Hello and happy Wednesday. Welcome to this week's episode of Ghost Hunting in New England with your hosts Amelia
and Beth.
Play ball!
Play ball!
That's right. This week we have a nice little episode we've prepared for you guys all about haunted baseball parks.
Right. Not only can you get your Cracker Jacks here, get your hot dogs, get your ice cold beer, you could also get your ghosts.
Yeah.
Admit it, that was pretty good.
That's pretty good. That was pretty good, Beth. So, Beth, you have traveled around to many a baseball stadium.
I have. Yes, we that was a little family adventure. We have been my favorite of the trips. I'm actually going to talk about that one a little bit later. Was what we call the Beth's Family Midwestern Variety Baseball Tour. It was a 5-day trip that I took with my husband and our older son when he was, God, he must have been like 13 or so. And we flew out to Chicago. We saw a White Sox game, a Cubs game. Then we drove up to Milwaukee and we saw a Brewers game. And then we drove back to Chicago and took the train to St. Louis where we saw a Cardinals game and we flew home from there.
Cool.
Yeah.
How many baseball stadiums are there?
A lot.
How many have you been to?
Not as many as there are.
Interesting.
Sean's been to more of them than I have.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you're a baseball fan and you also happen to love ghosts, tonight might be your favorite episode ever. And if you're just into ghosts, we got you covered. And if you're into baseball, we can talk a little baseball too.
I don't know. I wish I knew more about baseball. I worked at Fenway Park for 4 seasons and I know very little, but that's okay.
I bet you know more than you think you do.
4 balls is a walk.
Yes.
3 strikes and you're out of there.
All right. So my first stadium is going to be Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, California. It has a whole host of spooky stories that follow it around. And from the start, it was just a bad idea. I'm not even talking here about taking the Brooklyn Dodgers out of their East Coast digs and transporting them to the left coast. It's much more atrocious than that. In the 1950s, there was a bit of an urban housing crisis nationwide. You know, World War II, baby boomers, growing families, yada, yada. And the federal government stepped in and started buying up land all over the country. The basic pitch was, sell us your land now. We will pay you top dollar. We're going to build public housing, and you will have first dibs to buy the finished properties, which seems like pretty standard lines from the U.S. government. And we always know how great their reputation is for keeping those sort of promises, right? So the land that they're eyeballing in Los Angeles was a place called Chavez Ravine. It was a home to hundreds of Mexican Americans who had lived in that area for generations. The community they had there included markets and a school. There were doctors' offices. It was just like a regular little town. The government made their initial offer, but people weren't taking them up on it. And the government eventually sent in Spanish-speaking agents to do a hard sell to the residents. Sell now for this slightly lower price than we originally offered, and you can leave now or be forced out in a few months with nothing. Your choice. They were such nice people. And now that the government got all of those pesky landowners out of the way, it was time to start raising the area and building new homes, right? Wrong. Just as the last of the deals were made, came the Great Red Scare, and housing projects and many other social supports were decried as communism, and all plans for the new developments stopped as quickly as they started. And so the residents moved back to their homes. Haha, psych. No, they didn't. The land was left empty for several years. The Dodgers owner came to Los Angeles looking for space when his Brooklyn deal fell through, and it was very convenient that LA had this giant plot of land available. No one lived there. Nothing was happening with the area. So sure, this nice baseball man could certainly have it to build his stadium and bring a baseball team to Los Angeles. And it would be completely fine if he also used the adjacent land for his parking lot. No problem to exhume the hundreds of graves in the Hebrew Benevolent Society cemetery to make space. It was only the first Jewish cemetery in Los Angeles. I'm sure it would be fine. So in 1962, the Los Angeles Dodgers officially called this their new home. But since they had ultimately stolen the land from both the Mexican-American community and the Jewish-American community, is it any wonder that strange things happen? The staff report that the real fun starts after the fans go home. There's a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes when they're alone. People report hearing the chatter of fans sitting in the stands when there's clearly no one there. Many people say they hear voices trying to speak to them, but they can't understand what the voice is saying. And this one creeps me out a bit. People say they hear the running of feet, and not just like kids running or even adults, but they describe it as four-legged running, like a horse or a dog, the sort of large animal you would definitely know was around. People think a lot of these happenings are from the displaced souls who lived there or were laid to rest in the cemetery and who just want to have their space back. But there's more. Apparently, prior to the stadium being built, there was a bit of a lover's lane near the rock face that the stadium is built into now. And a couple honeymooning in LA was parked there enjoying a view of the city. The couple got out of the car to stretch their legs, and the husband stumbled and fell down the cliff to his death. Distraught, his new bride didn't know what to do and threw herself over the cliff after him. Fans report seeing a woman in white falling and screaming before fading into nothing. And there's also a mysterious mist that comes from nowhere, settles over the bleachers near where the old lover's lane was, and then just as mysteriously disappears. So, can we talk about lizard people for a moment? I know they're not really ghosts, like not even a little bit ghosts, but apparently there are tunnels and vaults under the stadium that are inhabited by lizard people. Who taught the lizard people about baseball, and why do they love it so much? I want to know what you have to say about the lizard people. That's the end of my story.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's probably just where they meet up to help like run the New World Order.
Yeah. Okay.
Dodgers Stadium in Los Angeles.
I don't know why you say it like that.
Because everyone knows lizard people take over celebrities, and the whole Illuminati is involved with all of Hollywood, and it's all Jay-Z and Beyonce and Queen Elizabeth. It's a whole thing, Beth. God.
I think I need to learn more about the lizard people.
Jeez. Good story, though.
Yeah, I thought that was a fun story. You know, I know it's not New England, but it's baseball season, so let me talk about the Dodgers. Okay. It's only the third oldest stadium. That doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right at all.
But actually, I think it is. Even from the 1960s, the only ones older than it, like that are still their original construction, are Fenway and Wrigley.
The third oldest that is still there?
I think so.
What about Yankee Stadium?
Yankee Stadium was rebuilt
in 2009.
Okay. So that's not. Yankee Stadium's only like 12 years old now.
I guess you're right. Anyway, that good segue, Beth. Now we're talking about Old Yankee Stadium.
And as a diehard Red Sox fan, I have to let you know I will be booing throughout your story.
So it's funny. Everyone knows, especially probably if you're listening to this podcast, like the deep-seated rivalry between the Red Sox and the Yankees, which we are going to get to later in the episode. But one of my favorite moments when I was in France, so I walked into this restaurant right in Paris, right across from my hotel room, and I hung out there a lot. And I'm still friends with the guy on Facebook. So I walk in, I'm just looking at the menu, and it's France. So some guy literally just like comes out and pulls me inside, one of the waiters, and he's like, "Oh, you need wine?" And I'm like, "You're right, I do. Oh my God." So he's like, "Oh, you're American?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And his English wasn't that good. So he went and he got the manager and told the manager I was from Boston. So all of a sudden I'm sitting there, I got my olives, I got my wine. And this guy just jumps out and goes, "Red Sox suck. Yankees rule." I go, "Yankees suck." Just in the middle of this French bistro. Anyway, he had spent a year in New York, and it was very funny. It was great. So
Well,
Sebastian, bonjour.
What do they say? Like Boston is the only place that you would hear like a Yankees suck chant at a football game in January.
All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Yankee Stadium. So the Rockies' third base coach, Mike Galeo, said about Yankee Stadium ghosts that you always thought that the ghosts were in the hallway. When you were walking down the old batting cages in the back, you always felt that. Guys would say, watch the ghosts while you're walking down the halls. And when you get towards right field, you kind of peek over your shoulder and wonder. And I swear, you can hear some of the bats cracking in the background when those machines are not on. Gallego is among hundreds that believe the stadium is possessed. And by the stadium, I mean the old stadium that was in play until 2009. Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, Jason Giambi, Mariano Rivera, Ricky Henderson, and Chipper Jones are among many who believe that players get help from past legends. It says the ghosts of Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, and Lou Gehrig not only haunt the old stadium, but were helping the team along the way throughout the years.
Ooh.
But in 2009, things started changing. Gone was the old Yankee Stadium, and gone were the black seats in center field, and gone were the memories. The Cathedral of Baseball was no more. The same field where stars like Roger Maris and Joe DiMaggio called home was gone. Across the street, a bright and new stadium arose from concrete. The new Yankee Stadium was met with backlash. However, the show must go on. After the final game at the old stadium, Derek Jeter delivered a speech only he could give. Take the memories from this stadium, add them to new memories to come and at the new Yankee Stadium, and continue to pass them on from generation to generation. In April of 2009, the new Yankee Stadium opened its shiny doors to Yankees fans all over the city. The new stadium brought them not only luck, but also another ring. With a record of 103-59, the Yankees finished their first American League East. One final hurrah for the ghosts who helped them. The luck of the Yankees seemed to have gone and left with the old stadium. The 2009 season was the last time the Yankees would ever make it to the World Series.
Yay!
Since their new time in their new home, there have been no signs of paranormal life. Did the ghosts' contracts expire, making them free agents? Or, like the stadium where they had once ruled, did they fade into the distant memory? And some do say the reason they won in 2009 was for the ghosts to say their final goodbyes. I believe in ghosts, Derek Jeter told reporters after a Game 7 victory in the 2003. A quote that was just as relevant now as it was back then. Maybe the Yankees of today are lacking the sixth sense Jeter had. During the 2003 American League Championship Series, New York captain Derek Jeter told Aaron Boone to just wait until the ghosts came out to the stadium. Shortly after he said that, Boone hit a Tim Wakefield knuckleball into the night and the Yankees returned to the World Series once more. Jeter believed that ghosts of great players and great teams kept watch over Old Yankee Stadium, and funny things happened that had no normal explanation. Paranormal forces must have been at work. Jeter has also expressed a desire that the ghosts would follow him across the street to the new Yankee Stadium. I believe in ghosts, Derek Jeter told reporters. When the authors of the book Haunted Baseball, Ghosts, Cursed Legends, and Eerie Events asked Jeter if he too would come back as a ghost and haunt Yankee Stadium, he said, I hope so. So that's a little about that.
I would like if Derek Jeter just like moved on permanently. That would be fine. I'd be okay with that. And as for that Aaron Boone home run, that just made me very viscerally remember the morning after that happened, walking around Sean's house, and just we were all in just terrible moods, and it was like cursing Aaron Boone. And I remember Mikey had a friend who came over and his name was Aaron. And I was like unreasonably mad at this poor little like 9-year-old kid because his name was Aaron. Like,
Okay, my brother had a friend growing up, Gabe, and Gabe once wore a Yankees hat into my house, and my dad never let him in the house again.
at least your dad didn't bury him in the basement.
Like they could come over and they could play outside, but he was not allowed in the house.
That's
it runs
pretty
deep
awesome.
here. It runs deep here in New England. It runs deep.
Very, very,
Anyway,
very deep.
Who knew Jeter was so into ghosts? Some wild and crazy stuff. I also want to point out that this book, Haunted Baseball, Ghosts, Curses, Legends, and Eerie Events, haunted me throughout my research. Like, it is everywhere. We got to get that book because people are loving it. And for my story, I got a lot of information from the Bleacher Report and from interviews about their book.
Yeah, I found I at least got started from the Bleacher Report. That gave me some things to focus on, and then I kind of did my wild go down the rabbit hole and try to scare up some information. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right.
We don't need to give the Yankees any more airtime.
Yeah, no, Yankees. Instead, let's talk about Wrigley Field.
Sure.
So I've been there twice. And the Cubs actually.
Ferris Bueller. So is Ferris Bueller.
The Cubs actually won both times that I visited. It's actually a pretty cool ballpark. The first time I was there was in 2007 and 8, 7 or 8, when we did that Midwestern Variety Tour that I talked about. And the second time was in the summer of 2019 when I went to visit my friend Jen, who I also visited Charleston with, and that was the inspiration for last week's episode. So I'm not sure why Jen is so like front and center in my thoughts lately. Anyway, so any of us baseball, sorry.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen. Any of us baseball fans could recognize Wrigley from the outside. The box office has a particularly unique look to it, all white and red and lighting up neon. And we certainly know it as the field with the ivy-covered wall in center field. But what you may not know is it's haunted. Right? Wrigley is the second oldest ballpark in the United States. It was built 2 years after friendly Fenway. The first game was there in 1914, but it wasn't called Wrigley, and the team wasn't the Cubs. The original name was Weigman Field, named after the owner, a guy named Weigman, and the team who played there was called the Chicago Whales. Fierce, right?
What? There's no whales anywhere near Chicago.
Well, yeah. That team folded the next year, and Weigman pooled his money with the Wrigley family, and they brought the Cubs from Cincinnati to Weigman Park in 1916.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
They're called the Cubs, but what kind of Cubs are they? What are they named after?
I don't know. If they came from Cincinnati, they would have been the Cincinnati Cubs.
But what kind of Cubs are around Cincinnati? Like, is it like Bears? A bear reference?
Could be. It's a perfectly valid question. Would you like me to make up an answer or just say I don't know?
No, just say you don't know.
I don't know.
People listen to us for facts, Beth.
Hey. Sometimes, facts are debatable, right? All right. By 1918, Weigman was gone and the field was known as Cub Park. But by 1926, the field was renamed Wrigley Park after the owner, and so the name stands. Did you want to talk about some ghosts, though?
Okay.
Yeah, let's get to some ghosts. We're going to start out with Jolly Charlie. Jolly Charlie was a first baseman and manager for the Cubs with an impressive 45-year span from his first being traded to the Cubs until his final retirement. If you can believe it, Jolly Charlie was a nickname. Charlie Grimm was his given name, and he arrived in Chicago in 1925 to play first base. He did pretty well, even though the Cubs themselves stunk. He so impressed ownership that he was made the manager-player in 1932. He played for a few more years until 1936, but was primarily the team manager after that. He did 3 different tours as manager of the Cubs from 1932 to 1938, 1944 to 49, and then the 1960 season. I couldn't track down what he did from 1939 to 1944, but I think there was a little conflict in Europe and another one in the Pacific Ocean that may have taken his time during those years. Anyway, he retired after 1960 and lived that retirement life until his death in 1983. And he was given the honor that every baseball fan dreams of. His ashes were buried in a private box in left field.
Oh,
and that's
cool.
when, yeah, right. And that's when some stuff began.
Sweet.
If you're not familiar with baseball, I'll spare you all the details, but there's a phone in every dugout, which is where the players for the team hang out, and it connects to the bullpen, which is where the team's pitching staff hang out. So if a manager needs to change pitchers during a game, he calls down and tells someone to start warming up. It's very technologically savvy because back in the day, the manager would just look out at the bullpen. The manager would just look out at the bullpen and touch whichever arm he wanted to warm up, either a lefty or a righty. And this is important because it's a closed circuit. The only way the bullpen can ring is if someone is calling from the dugout. It's just the 2 cans with a string between them, basically. Well, after Jolly Charlie passed on in 1983, night crew staff started noticing that the bullpen phone would ring at odd hours. Now you can see the bullpen from the dugout and vice versa. And the night crew would swear up and down there was no one in the dugout making those calls. So the running theory is that Coach Grimm is calling for a pitching change. Staff also report seeing Charlie Grimm's ghost roaming the halls in the office area around the stadium, and they hear their names called on the field when there's no one around. And it's not a shout from far away, but like a soft whispering call of their name from very close by. Just spooky, spooky. All right, next up is Steve Goodman. Steve was a super fan of the Cubs his whole life. He was a songwriter who wrote songs that were sung by well-known artists. I believe Willie Nelson won a Grammy for his performance of City of New Orleans in 1985. I checked out the song on YouTube, but I've never heard it. He also wrote Go Cubs Go, which is the Cubs' end of a winning game song. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
Baseball season's underway. Well, you better get ready for a brand new day. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today.
You get the idea, yeah?
Yes.
So it's a pretty upbeat song. It leaves your fans feeling pretty good, something fun to sing after a win. Luckily, I have been there twice to hear it sung by the fans, but I don't know the words, so I can't sing
Hey,
along.
Beth,
But
can I ask you a question?
Yes, go ahead.
How many times have you been there?
Twice.
How many times did they win?
Both times I was there.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
All right. So anyway, back to Steve Goodman, who wrote that song. He was a well-known fan. He had a season ticket. Year after year, he sat right behind home plate. So he was one of those guys. You can always tell when you're watching a game if somebody's sitting behind home plate who doesn't belong there, because the first time a ball gets fouled back at them, they duck, right? They're afraid it's going to hit them. Makes sense. But there's a big screen. It's not going to hit them. He was the kind of guy who would not duck. Anyway, so sadly, he passed away in 1984 at the ripe age of 36. It was leukemia. Very tragic. But as the superfan who wrote their music, he was also allowed the privilege of being buried at Wrigley Park. His ashes were spread in the ivy growing up the wall so he could watch baseball forever. And he does. He is frequently spotted by fans sitting in his seat behind home plate, cheering on the Cubs. Okay. Last up, I have Harry Carey. And can I just say that overall, searching for information about haunted baseball parks was very difficult because of all of the euphemisms that baseball writers use about the ghosts of, former players and curses that are on different teams, and, that the players are haunted by things that happened in their past. And so typically, I don't know about you, Amelia, but I'm usually able to find some good results with some fairly simple keywords, but it was a lot more difficult doing baseball. So searching for Harry Carey was even more frustrating because Chicago has a famous steakhouse called Harry Carey's, and it seemed that every piece of research I was pursuing was leading me toward the steakhouse and the ghost tour that leaves from there each night.
Dang.
So yeah, that it was really, it took a lot of patience to keep going. Oh, well. So it was just frustrating. So Harry Carey was a beloved announcer for the Chicago Cubs. He was known for his quips in the broadcast booth. And I thought about giving you a couple of the quips, but some of them, while they might have played in, the 80s and the 90s, now in 2021, they weren't appropriate to be saying. So I'll give you his catchphrase. Holy cow. And his opening line for when he would open the broadcast, he would say, "Hello again, everybody. It's a beautiful day for baseball." And Amelia, I think we should steal that as an opening line for the pod. You should start next week's episode with "Hello and happy Wednesday. It's a beautiful night for some ghost stories." Oh, come on. You can do a better laugh than that. Anyway, Harry Carey was the Cubs announcer for 16 years, and he just couldn't bring himself to leave. He died in 1998, and he was not buried in Wrigley Field. Instead, he's buried in a regular cemetery about 45 minutes away from Chicago. But the employees of Wrigley Field, as well as fans, often see him still hanging around. He walks around in the press box and the bleachers, and not only do people see him, they also report feeling his presence. A mist will appear from nowhere, and they'll feel an overwhelming sense of someone there. And it's just a feeling. They often won't see anybody, but it's just that mist and that very strong perception of somebody else there. So one of the fun things and the cool things about the baseball ghosts is that none of the ones that I looked into anyway were malevolent, right? They were all just friendly baseball loving guys who really just want to stick around and watch the game be played forever. I really enjoyed doing the research for this week's episode.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, good story. It's a lot of fun.
So yeah, if you want to head out to Wrigley, keep an eye behind home plate. Maybe you'll see Steve Goodwin. Right? If you're walking around in the concession areas underneath, maybe you'll see Harry Carey. Maybe you'll see Coach Grimm, Jolly Charlie.
Harry Carey.
Harry Carey. As opposed to, no, never mind. Cut that.
All right, Beth.
Next, yes, Amelia.
We are on to Fenway Park. Woo, 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 woo. The only major league stadium in all of New England, which is kind of cool. We have the Pawtucket Stadium. Is it called the Pawtucket Stadium? What's it called?
Pawsox Stadium. Pawsox. Yeah. Something like that.
No, wherever the Paw Sox go. And they used to always make us go there for some reason when we were kids. Did you have to do that when you were a kid?
I actually I always liked going to the Paw Sox games. You're right. It does have a different name. I can't think of the name of the field off the top of my head, but they're moving out to Worcester. And they're going to be the Woo Sox.
Wow.
At Polar Field.
Cool.
And I only know that because it's the same Polar that makes the seltzer water that I like.
Oh, very cool. Nice.
But I'm a little sad because Worcester is further away than Pawtucket. Pawtucket was the first exit. I don't even think you had to go into Rhode Island on the highway. You actually got off in Attleboro.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I always loved going to Pawtucket. Sorry. I guess you didn't like it.
It was whatever.
Okay.
I'd rather a trip to the aquarium. Okay. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I worked at Fenway Park for a very long time. I went to college right in Kenmore Square, and I spent a lot of time in the area. I was, as longtime listeners will know, I went to school for photography. And when the Red Sox were playing, I worked with somebody called Fan Photo. So we'd go around to all the fans and take their photo, and then you can buy it, but you were at all the games. You got to watch all the games. So I usually had like pretty nice seats. Like I mentioned, I had the Bruins in my section. And you know Jordan's Furniture, if you're around here, you know the Jordan's Furniture guys. And I had the Jordan Furniture guys in my section. And I always thought it was cool. And it was the first time I ever saw a Chanel purse, was one of the guys' wives. And that's when I was like, oh my God, it's just stunning. Like, this is all I want in my life for the rest of my life. I still remember seeing that purse. Okay. So anyway, when the Red Sox weren't playing, I worked as the tour photographer. So I would take photos of people on tours. So I spent way too much time at Fenway. I got very, very tan every summer, and it was a lot of fun. But I wasn't that into baseball, but it was a really cool experience nonetheless. So here are some spooky tales out of Fenway. And I will say right off the bat, I never saw Ghost of Fenway, but I believe that they're real. Okay. The night workers at Fenway Stadium believe Babe Ruth's presence is more than just a curse. Babe Ruth is believed to haunt Fenway late at night. While no one has seen his ghost, several witnesses account for hearing noises, late night batting practices, and eerie muffled cheers chanting his name. So I thought that was kind of cool because he's haunting Yankee Stadium. He's haunting Fenway. It's always interesting to me when you have it's like Vlad the Impaler. He's haunting like 20 different places. It's like, how does that even work? Do you just split up when you're a ghost, or do you just like zip around? I don't know. Former Red Sox owner Tom Yawkey and baseball great Ted Williams used to shoot clay pigeons together in their free time. Former Red Sox pitcher Bill Spaceman Lee claims the day that Williams died, he encountered a pigeon who landed on the ball field. The pigeon would not leave the field and kept purposefully blocking him. Might that pigeon have been Ted Williams? Bill Lee is sure of it. He has actually had many feathered encounters with the departed Tom Yawkey, reincarnated as a bird. He says he's encountered Yawkey in the form of a pigeon in the players' parking lot in Fenway, as a crow that sits on the fence at Montreal, as a red-tailed hawk that follows him through the woods, and as a crow that dove on him in Medicine Hat. According to Lee, a pigeon crashed into the seats at Fenway during the final game of the 78th season that he believes was also Yawkey. Mm-hmm. Red Sox announcer Carl Bean claims that legendary PA announcer Sherm Feller haunts his booth. Feller's deep baritone voice set the tone for Fenway Park from the Impossible Dream year 1967 to 1992. It's said you can still hear him faintly talking in the press box, and that he goes and ruffles up all their papers and makes a big mess, like someone emphatically shouting about the game, throwing stuff around. Now we move on to the biggest superstition in all of New England sports history. And if you are a New England sports fanatic, you know we are a superstitious group of people. The curse of the Bambino was a superstitious sports curse that caused the Red Sox not to win the World Series from 1918 to 2004. 86 long years.
And my husband and his father would tell you all the time exactly how many years, days it had been. And it was, it was heartbreaking for them every year.
Every year.
One of the mottos of Red Sox fans especially is there's always next year.
Yep. It was the same way in my house growing up. So the misfortune began after the Red Sox sold star player Babe Ruth, nicknamed the Bambino, for $125,000 to New York Yankees after the 1919 season. Before that point, the Red Sox had been one of the most successful professional baseball franchises, winning the first World Series and amassing 5 of the first 15 World Series titles. As is standard curse lore, Red Sox owner and theatrical producer Harry Frazee used the proceeds from the sale to finance the production of the Broadway musical, usually said to be No No Nanette. And if you grew up in the Childs household, it absolutely was No No Nanette, and there was just no question about that. I was reading this. I'm like, why would anyone think it was anything but that? After the sale, they went without a title for almost an entire century, as the previous lackluster Yankees became one of the most successful professional sports franchises in North America. The curse became a focal point of the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. Although the title drought dated back to 1918, the sale of Ruth to the Yankees was completed January 3rd, 1920. Frazee also backed many other productions before and after the sale of Ruth. And No No Nanette did not see its first performance until 5 years after the sale and 2 years after Frazee sold the Red Sox. Leigh Monteville wrote in The Big Bam, The Life and Times of Babe Ruth. The production, No No Nanette, had originated as a non-musical stage play called My Lady Friends, which opened on Broadway December 1919. That play had indeed been financed as a direct result of Ruth's deal. Various researchers have pointed out that Frazee had close ties to the Yankees owners and that many of the player deals, as well as the mortgage deal for Fenway Park itself, had an awful lot to do with the financing of his plays. Before Ruth left Boston, the Red Sox had won 5 of the 15 first World Series, as I already said, with Ruth pitching for the 1916 and 1918 championships. He was also involved in 1915, but he was only used once, and he was a pinch hitter. The Yankees had not played in the World Series up to that time. In the 84 years after the sale, the Yankees played 39 World Series and won 26 of them, twice as many as any other Major League Baseball team. Meanwhile, over the same time span, the Red Sox played in only 4 World Series and lost each and every series. And Beth, what was so special about how they lost every single one of those 4 games?
That David Ortiz basically carried the Red Sox on his back?
Every single one of the 4 times they lost the World Series, they lost it in the 7th game.
Ouch.
Yes. Red Sox fans had attempted various methods over the years to exorcise their famed curse. These included placing a Boston cap atop Mount Everest while burning a Yankees cap at the base camp of the mountain, finding a piano owned by Ruth that he had supposedly pushed into a pond near his Sudbury, Massachusetts farm, Home Plate Farm. In a Ken Burns 1994 documentary titled Baseball, former Red Sox pitcher Bill Lee suggested that the Red Sox should exhume the body of Babe Ruth, transport it back to Fenway, and publicly apologize for trading Ruth to the Yankees.
I don't know that they would have to exhume the body and move it to Fenway. They could just, put out a tweet or something.
Oh, I think they had. Talk of the curse as an ongoing phenomenon died in 2004 when the Red Sox came back from a 0-3 deficit to defeat the Yankees, in the best of 7 American League Championship Series, also known as the ALCS, and then swept St. Louis Cardinals to win the World Series. Woo! And it was a big effing deal. Some declared the curse broken, and this is all very interesting to me. Some fans cite that the comedy curse-breaking ceremony performed by musician Jimmy Buffett and his warm-up team, one dressed as Babe Ruth and one dressed as a witch doctor at Fenway concert in September of 2004. Just after being traded to the Red Sox, Curt Schilling appeared in an advertisement for the Ford F-150 pickup truck hitchhiking with a sign indicated he was going to Boston. When he picked up, he said he had an 86-year-old curse to break. But the one big one, and the one I think really did it, is that the curse was broken. The curse was broken on a game on August 31st, 2004, when a foul ball hit by Manny Ramirez flew into Section 9, box 95, row double A, and struck a boy in the face, knocking out his two front teeth. And that 16-year-old boy was Lee Gavin, a Boston fan whose favorite player was Ramirez. And where did he live? Where did Lee Gavin live, Beth?
I have no idea, but I'm horrified that he got his teeth knocked out.
I can't believe you don't know this story. He lived on the Sudbury farm owned by Babe Ruth.
Wow. Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. That same day, the Yankees suffered their worst loss in team history in a 22-0 clobbering at home against the Cleveland Indians. And it was huge.
Yay!
And they won, and it was huge. And no one came to school the next day. I was a freshman in high school. It was wild. It was just craziness. Was I a freshman? Yes. I was a sophomore in high school. I stand corrected. I was a sophomore.
I had a hat. It was a witch's hat. And Sean and I decided that the witch's hat was the good luck charm. So whenever the Red Sox started falling behind, one of us would pull out the witch hat and put it on. And if they started falling behind, somebody would yell, "Where is the hat? Somebody's got to wear the hat." It may surprise you to know that I have always been an early to fall asleep kind of person. So I didn't actually stay up to watch the last game. But I did wake up at one point and I looked down and Sean was sitting at the foot of the bed by himself wearing the witch hat while he watched the game. Yeah. Oh yeah, that curse. But it's so funny now because we have a whole generation of kids who have grown up with Boston sports teams being absolute champions. You know, we've had Tom Brady. Yeah, the Red Sox have won it a couple of times in the last few years. You know, the Bruins have won it, the Celtics have won it. And so all of a sudden this year, when all four teams, quite frankly, stink again, everybody's so confused about what's happening.
Well, that always struck me because not only did the Red Sox win, but after that point, Boston as a whole was unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. It was good ghost energy.
Yeah. I remember going into school the next day and my history teacher said how him and his brothers had a toast over their father's grave that night that the Red Sox won because their dad had never seen the Red Sox win. It was just, it was just one of those things here. People went nuts. My dad could not believe it happened.
I have a theory that a lot of old people actually died that winter of 04-05 who were literally just waiting to see the Red Sox win it. And they were like, I won it. Yeah. I can die now.
Right.
Which sounds ridiculous, but I think that there are people who they're like, all right, I've seen everything I need to see. Time's up.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Well, Beth, do you know what else we have this week?
Really stuffed bellies from Easter dinner.
We have a lot of drive-by ghostings as well as
Darn
some
it!
reviews.
Why am I always wrong?
Oh, what did you have for Easter? Did you have a nice time?
Oh, we had a great time. I did surf and turf.
Sweet.
I don't like ham. I'm sorry to everyone who was just shocked by that statement, but I don't like it. It does not make me happy.
A lot of people are going to be really, really shocked and offended, Beth.
That I don't like ham?
Shocked.
I don't know. I don't understand what people like about it. Blech.
All right. So anyway, very interesting, but let's move on to our drive-by ghosting.
Wait, you didn't tell us what you had. I heard you had too much wine.
God. Yeah, that is what I had. I had too much wine, and Paul and I have been doing a just phenomenal job on our diets, but we were driving home and I was like, I want a cake. And he was like, make a cake, girl. So we stopped off at Stop and Shop and I got some ingredients and I made a bomb carrot cake. And then I gave the rest to my friends. Okay.
By your friends, you mean your left and right hand?
No, I mean Mike and Lauren, my friends. Oh, and Mike and Lauren have COVID. So everyone keep them on your really good thoughts this week. Okay. So our first story comes to us from Tom, titled Creepy Stuff My Kids Say. Hey, Amelia and Beth. Great to hear you again. This season has been really fun. If I could leave a 5-star review somewhere, I would listen, but I only listen to Spotify, so 15 stars. Anyway, there seem to be less drive-by ghostings this season. There have been. You're absolutely right. Thank you. So I thought I would do a couple installments of Creepy Stuff My Kids Have Said. 1. On our way back from a doctor's appointment when my oldest son Gavin was 4, he's now 14. From the back seat, my wife and I heard him go, "I hate when they did that." To which we said, "What are you talking about, bud?" And he said, "The soldiers. They said they were hungry because it was cold, and they took my cow and chickens to eat them." My wife and I looked at each other in stunned, open-mouthed silence. I said, "What were they wearing, kiddo?" He replied, "Lots of old blue and brown clothes, and they had really, really long guns." Our route home from the doctors takes us directly through Valley Forge National Park, where Washington and the Continental Army had camped for a winter while hiding from the British. Once we were through the park, we prodded him more about it, and he didn't seem to know what we were talking about after. I'll send in another next week. Happy huntings, Tom. Well, my goodness, Tom, that is
Wow.
and
That was
interesting.
amazing.
Yeah.
I love those little kid stories about, I both love them and I'm terrified by them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great idea to ask, like, what were the soldiers wearing? Like that, it would never occur to me to ask such a question, but it tells so much. Like, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that was awesome. I can't wait to hear next week's too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beth, would you like to read our next one?
Sure. It's a long one. All right. Our next drive-by ghosting for this week is from Spencer. Hello, Amelia and Beth. I love your show and have been contemplating which story I should tell for my first drive-by ghosting, and I finally decided. Before I tell the story, can I just interrupt here for a second, Spencer, and say I am now so excited that there are going to be multiple drive-by ghostings. All right, back to the story. A little background on how I stumbled on your podcast. I grew up in northern Nevada, and since I was 3 years old, I'm now 25, I have said that I was going to live in Boston one day. Both my parents are sensitives, as well as myself, and my mom is convinced that in a former life I lived in Boston because, as she puts it, I'm definitely not new. I've always had a connection to paranormal, so there have been experiences aplenty throughout my life. When I made the move to Massachusetts, I decided to search podcasts about the local area. The story I'm going to tell you today happened when I was 16. At the time, my mom was dating a man who had a 3-year-old son. He was my partner in crime. It's important here to note that he refused to let anyone cut his hair besides me. After letting his hair get pretty long, him and I decided it was time for a cut, so we went into the hall bathroom and I went to work with the clippers. Suddenly, from the family room, which my room was right off of, I heard my mom yell, "Daniel Ray, get out of your brother's room!" Shocked, I picked him up and held him under his arms, as you usually would to pick up a toddler, and took him to the hall, holding him up jokingly, saying, Ma, I have D right here." Without looking over, she shot back at me, "Then explain why I just watched him go in your room." Without prompt, Daniel pipes up, "That's Colby. He's my friend." We were all intrigued, so we gently proceeded to ask the toddler for more information. "What does Colby look like? Where does he live?" To which he answered, "Colby lives here. He sleeps in Bubby's, my beanbag chair. He's a boy like me, but his pants are weird. They have a shirt on them." We assumed he was describing overalls. For weeks after Colby made himself known, from closing doors to grabbing my toes while I was trying to fall asleep. I believe Colby is still with me now. I've always known I had a ghostly friend who has moved around from state to state to state with me. Nevada, Texas, Virginia, Arizona, and now Massachusetts. A belief I came to after meeting with the wonderful Jamie Day. Woo! If you want to hear more stories, I have plenty. Thanks for reading. Best wishes, Spencer.
Well, thanks so much, Spencer. Great story. And thanks for checking out Jamie. And thanks for listening to our show. And thanks for being cool.
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah, I would be interested to know what Colby is doing now. And by all means, yes, send us all your stories. Right? We'll read them. Share them with everybody. We are everyone's world to, or what do I want to say here? We are the window to everyone's ghost world. Share your stories and we will tell them to the world for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Including our next person who wrote us stories. And these stories come from Amy. And actually, Spencer, since Tom said he was going to write us a story for next week, and Amy wrote us a lot of stories, so we're going to kind of spread hers out. You should write one too for next week, and that way we can have all 3 next week, right?
Ooh, great idea.
Yeah, right? Fun. Okay. Hi, Beth and Amelia. I've been enjoying your podcast. It's lots of fun to listen to. Here are some of my ghostings in categories. So we're going to start. So Amy wrote us a lot, which we love, and I'm so grateful for. But because tonight's theme seems to be children, we will start with when I was a child. Also because that's the first one she wrote us. I grew up in a large Victorian house. My siblings and I still talk about the hauntings we went through. Ends of beds being lifted in the night, unexplained noises, voices, etc. 2 instances still stand out to me decades later. When I was quite young, I shared a bedroom with my older sister. During the night, I would often see a headless male figure coming out of my closet. He didn't pay any attention to me, but he made motions like he was carrying something, walking a few steps into the room, then putting it down on the floor. After a few trips back and forth, he'd finally go back into the closet and not come out for the rest of the night. When I was a little older, probably early teens, I was home with 2 of my sisters. I started to descend from the 2nd floor to the 1st. I felt someone push me from behind. Hand in the middle of my back and a hard shove. I tumbled down the stairs. I had been pushed hard enough that I could barely touch any of the stairs on my way down. I landed on my knees on the landing below. It happened so quickly that my first thought was one of my sisters must have pushed me, and there was a culprit in mind. Before I could even pick myself up, the downstairs foyer door flew open and both of my sisters rushed into the stairway looking at me. They had heard a crash when I landed. Since they came so quickly, it couldn't be either of them who pushed. And as I said, we were the only 3 in the house. I had a few bruises and otherwise was fine. Thankfully, that never happened again. And if anyone hears this and wonders if there were another way down so someone might have done the pushing, yes, there was a back staircase. But they showed up in the foyer far more quickly than they could have used the back staircase at the other end of the house. Good story, Amy.
Excellent stories, Amy.
Spooky stories.
What is it about ghosts pushing us downstairs?
They don't want you in their house.
I know, but there are other ways to let me know that. You don't have to push me down the stairs.
They want to kill you.
I don't know about that. Supposedly, all those ghosts at Bruce and Cynthia's house were friendly, but one of them pushed me down the stairs. I don't know why you rolled your eyes at me.
I don't know how friendly they were.
Oh. Well, that one wasn't very friendly. It's true.
Agreed. Wow.
So, yeah, I totally understand, Amy, your having been pushed down the stairs and all of the terrible, terrible thoughts that come with that. But I'm glad that it wasn't your sister's, because it's bad enough if it's a ghost. It's even worse if it's a living person that you then have to keep talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for writing in. And I can't wait to read your other stories on air because I peeked and I know they're pretty good.
Woohoo. All right. Well, what else we got going on for this week?
We got some reviews.
Ooh, we got reviews.
We do.
All 5 stars.
So,
right?
yes, I believe that I have a feeling we're going to have some Apple reviews come in. And I have a feeling because on Apple, it takes a few days before they show up. So I think if someone wrote a review and they're expecting to hear it on this show, we don't see it yet. So it's not there. but I do know we got one on Audible. Thanks everyone who's been leaving us reviews on Audible. That's been really great. And if you could please just continue doing that, that'd be awesome. So the title of this is Love It. They didn't leave a name though. 15 stars. My favorite podcast, fun and spooky stories from around New England. The hosts are excellent. I would 100% recommend to anyone interested in the paranormal. Well, thank you so much. That was really nice.
Yes, the anonymous reviews are always fun too. Thank you, love it. We're glad that we are your favorite podcast. We are also Amelia's favorite podcast.
We are, it's true. One day we'll be Beth's favorite too.
You know what's weird? I don't actually listen to our podcast.
I know you don't listen to our podcast.
If it's my week to do the editing, I listen to it through the editing stages and then I let it go.
No, I love our show. I listen to it all the time. Beth thinks it's self-indulgent, but
it's completely self-indulgent.
It's a great show.
I prefer to indulge myself in other things.
I always ask people who, they're in bands. I'm like, do you listen to your own band? And they're always like, yeah, all the time. I think it's great. That's why we're in a band.
Okay.
I feel about our show. I think it's great. So anyway, Beth, we got anything else?
No, I don't think so. Did you know that Wrigley Field was the last baseball stadium to put in lights so they could hold night games?
Wow, that's interesting.
They didn't put them in until 1988.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
You were almost even born.
I wasn't born. No.
I know.
We only have 2 more episodes left this season.
Yeah, I know we have Ghost Brides. That's going to be the finale. What's next week?
Do you want me to say? As of right now, we're thinking about Revolutionary War in New England, but I'm wondering if we should change it.
Okay. Well.
So maybe it'll be that. Maybe it'll be something else for everyone.
Right. I mean, hey, we have like 3 days to plan out what we're going to talk about for the next episode.
Yeah. And we're taking a vacation this weekend. So.
Oh, that's right.
Cool.
This should be so much fun.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. You want to contact us out?
Sure. So everyone, please send us your drive-by ghostings to ghosthuntinginnewengland@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at ghosthuntinginnewengland. I haven't been updating it as much. I got to update it more. But you know what I have been updating a lot? Twitter. And you can find that at Ghost Hunting NE. There's a lot of thoughts in my head lately. So do you ever feel like there's just like birds running around in your brain and in your body? Like you just can't focus, but like you feel like you're out of yourself, but like you're also in yourself, but like too much is going on all at once.
They make medication for that now.
I can't take it. I can't take medicine. It's a problem. But I was getting a massage today and I was like, I should start doing Reiki again more often because I am a freaking lunatic. Anyway, if you're also a lunatic and you want to get on Twitter, but like don't follow us if you like post negative stuff on Twitter all day because I don't like that. No. Like we got to bring like good energy to the world on our Twitter accounts. Okay. Facebook.com/Ghost Hunting in New England. On our website, which Beth has recently updated, ghosthuntinginnewengland.com. And that's it.
Make sure that you email Amelia your shirtless pictures. She is getting married shortly, but that doesn't stop her from enjoying your shirtless picture hilarity that you all send her.
And as always,
happy hunting. Amelia's dancing. I'm not sure why she's dancing, but
I'm happy.
Okay.